The limp was subtle, a hitch in her stride that had been worsening for 6 nights straight. And in Carlo Dolan's world, weakness was either exploited or eliminated. But Alexis wasn't weak. She was his waitress, his observation, his growing obsession, and that limp was about to become his war to wage. She muttered something about twisting it on the stairs, eyes already dropping to avoid his gaze. But he'd made his decision the moment the tray wobbled and her ankle buckled, revealing that dark purple swelling, that defensive wince of someone who'd learned to hide pain as survival. Whatever coward had put that injury there just became Carlo's problem to erase. The ivory pearl was winding down for the night. Atlantic City's elite politicians, developers, men who laundered their reputations as efficiently as Carlo laundered. Money filtered past the marble columns, and security who looked like valets but carried very different insurance policies. Low jazz drifted from concealed speakers, syncing with the steady rhythm of Carlo's calculation as he tracked her movement through his club. 6 weeks. That's how long Alexis Campos had worked his floor. That's how long he'd been cataloging her. The precise angle of her shoulders when she thought herself unobserved. The way she steadied herself against tables between rounds. How she flinched at sudden movement, but never at his approach. Like some primal part of her already understood the distinction between men who postured and men who executed. He shouldn't be watching her this intently. She was staff. He had protocols about that. Boundaries that kept his empire efficient and his complications minimal. But Alexis had a way of making him reconsider his protocols. Tonight, when she'd stumbled when that tray had tilted and her body had compensated with that telltale, pain-sharp adjustment, he'd seen it. The swollen ankle, the older scar on her shin, the story written in contusions and controlled breathing. Carlo Dolan had built his power on reading what people tried to hide. And Alexis Campos was hiding violence that wasn't hers to carry. He signaled Marco with 2 fingers. His second-in-command materialized from the shadows near the bar, already anticipating orders. The waitress, Alexis Campos. I want everything where she lives, who she sees, why she's limping. Carlo's voice was surgical, emotionless. And I want it before sunrise. Marco nodded once and disappeared. Carlo returned his attention to Alexis as she cleared the last high-stakes table, moving with that careful, compensating grace of the chronically injured. She was protecting something. Someone had taught her that hiding damage was safer than revealing it. That someone had just made a territorial miscalculation. Because Carlo Dolan didn't share. Not his city, not his business, and sure as hell not the woman who'd been invading his thoughts for 6 weeks. The bruise on her ankle looked like another man's claim. And claims like that didn't stand in his territory. Before we continue this story and witness the shocking events that shake Atlantic City to its very core, please subscribe to our channel and like this video. Carlo's hand closed around her elbow before she could retreat to the kitchen. Not rough, but absolute. The kind of grip that communicated negotiation wasn't an option. My office. Now. Alexis went rigid, that full-body tension of someone calculating escape routes that didn't exist. Mr. Dolan, I just need to finish Your shift ended 4 minutes ago. He was already guiding her past the bar, through the private corridor where cameras went conveniently dark. We're going to have a conversation you've been avoiding for 6 weeks. The office door clicked shut with the finality of a vault ceiling. Soundproofed walls, reinforced glass, leather and dark wood that smelled like expensive cigars and expensive secrets. Carlo released her arm but positioned himself between her and the exit, not threatening, just inevitable. She wrapped her arms around herself. That universal armor of women who'd learned to make themselves smaller. If this is about the tray, I'll pay for. It's about the limp. Carlo's voice dropped to that quiet register that made grown men reconsider their life choices. It's about the way you're favoring your left side. The bruising on your ankle that you think the uniform skirt hides. The fact that you flinch when anyone moves too fast except me. The color drained from her face. I don't know what you don't. The single word cut like a blade. I've spent 20 years reading people who lie professionally. You're not one of them, and you're not good at it. He moved closer, watching her fight the instinct to retreat. Someone is hurting you. Someone thinks they can touch what's mine and walk away intact. I'm not times yours, asterisk. But her voice shook, betraying the fragile defiance. You work in my club. You take my money. That makes you mine to protect. Carlo pulled his phone from his pocket, set it on the desk between them like a loaded weapon. So here's how this works, Alexis. You're going to sit down. You're going to stop lying. And you're going to tell me his name. The silence stretched, broken only by her uneven breathing. Then, barely a whisper, you can't help me. He's a judge. Carlo smiled cold, predatory, final. Perfect. I specialize in untouchable men. Marco dropped the file on Carlo's desk at 4:47 a.m., looking like he'd aged a year in 6 hours. That alone told Carlo everything before he opened it. "You're not going to like this, boss." Carlo flipped open the manila folder. The first page showed a man in judicial robes, silver-haired and distinguished, the kind of face that looked trustworthy on campaign posters. Judge James Staples, Family Court, 3rd District. 15 years on the bench. Impeccable reputation. Connected to every power broker from City Hall to the State House. The second page showed Alexis's restraining order application. Denied 3 times. "He's presiding over the Marina development case," Marco said quietly. "Our case. The rezoning hearing is in 2 weeks. He holds every card we need to break ground on the Atlantic City expansion." Carlo's jaw tightened. 6 months of planning, 12 million in legal groundwork. His entire strategy for going legitimate or legitimate enough hinged on Staples signing off on permits that would transform the waterfront into Carlo's crown jewel. One decision could make him a real estate mogul instead of just a criminal with expensive taste, and the man holding that decision was putting his hands on Alexis. "There's more." Marco pulled out another sheet. "Sealed domestic incident from 8 years ago. Different woman. Case disappeared after a private settlement. And he's got the police commissioner's brother-in-law in his pocket. Filed 3 harassment complaints against Alexis when she tried to fight back. Made her times look unstable." Carlo studied the photograph of Staples at some charity gala, arm around the mayor, radiating that particular arrogance of men who'd never faced consequences. The system didn't just protect him. The system was built to be his weapon. "We move against him, we lose the Marina deal," Marco said, spelling out what they both knew. "Probably trigger a federal investigation into our finances. Everything you've built toward legitimacy gone." Carlo closed the file, his expression settling into something colder than Atlantic City in January. "The system protects men like him." He looked up, and Marco recognized the expression from hostile takeovers and territorial wars. "We will break it." Carlo's driver took the corner fast enough to make the Escalade's tires scream. Marco's text had been 2 words, asterisk, "He's there." Asterisk. The GPS tracker they'd placed on Staples' Mercedes showed him parked outside Alexis's apartment building, and Carlo's blood had gone cold. They arrived to find Staples gripping Alexis's arm in the building's alcove, his judicial composure replaced with something ugly and raw. Her shopping bags were scattered across the pavement, groceries spilling into the gutter. "You think you can embarrass me? Make me look weak?" Staples's voice carried that particular fury of powerful men being defied. "I own you, Alexis. I own the cops who'll take my statement over yours. I own." Carlo's hand closed around Staples's wrist, with enough pressure to make bones grind. "You own nothing here." Staples spun, recognition and calculation flashing across his face. "Mr. Dolan, this is a private matter between. Leave, now. Before I decide whether judges bleed differently than other men." Something in Carlo's tone, or maybe the way Marco materialized from the SUV like a well-dressed nightmare, made Staples release Alexis and step back. But he recovered quickly, that courtroom authority reasserting itself. "You have no idea who you're threatening. I know exactly who you are, Your Honor." Carlo smiled without warmth. "The question is whether you know who I am." Staples left, but his parting look at Alexis promised this wasn't finished. Carlo turned to find her trembling, arms wrapped tight around herself. "I didn't ask you to. My sister was 19. The words came out flat, unexpected. Different man, same pattern. He put her in the hospital twice before anyone believed her. By the time our family's money and lawyers could help, she'd already learned to flinch at shadows." He met Alexis's eyes. "I was too young then, too powerless. I'm neither now." Alexis stared at him, something shifting behind her fear. "He'll destroy you for this. Your business deal. Everything. Let him try." Carlo extended his hand. "But he's done destroying you." Her fingers were shaking when they closed around his. "What happens now?" "Now," Carlo said, "you let me be the monster he should have feared from the beginning." Sophia worked from a converted penthouse 3 blocks from Carlo's club, surrounded by enough server equipment to run a small country. She'd hacked her first bank at 16, served 2 years in a federal facility, and emerged with a very particular set of marketable skills. Carlo paid her enough to ensure those skills stayed exclusive. "I need everything the system doesn't want found," Carlo said, sliding a USB drive across her standing desk. "Judge James Staples. Not the public record, the buried record." Sophia's fingers were already flying across 3 keyboards simultaneously. "Judicial misconduct gets sealed tighter than mob indictments. You're talking encrypted court databases, attorney-client privilege, settlement agreements with NDAs backed by contempt charges. So it'll take you what, 48 hours? She grinned without looking up. I like how you think I've gotten slow. Her screens filled with cascading code, database backdoors opening like flowers and fast forward. Give me 24. She called Carlo at 3 a.m. He answered on the first ring. Your judge has been a very busy boy. Sophia's voice carried that particular satisfaction of someone who'd just cracked something meant to stay cracked. 6 sealed settlements in 12 years. All women. All domestic situations. The court system didn't just protect him, they actively buried it. Reassigned cases, expedited confidential agreements, made complainants sign gag orders so ironclad they couldn't even tell therapists. Carlo's grip tightened on his phone. How much did it cost him? That's the beautiful part. It cost him nothing. The settlements came from a judicial misconduct insurance fund, taxpayer money cleaning up his mess. He walked away from every single one without a mark on his record. Papers rustled on her end. But I found the original complaints before they were sealed. Testimony, medical records, photos that were supposed to be destroyed. One woman recorded a phone call where he explicitly threatened to use his judicial connections to have her committed. Can you prove the pattern? Boss, I can prove conspiracy. The Administrative Office of Courts knew and covered it up systematically. This isn't just one bad judge, it's institutional protection. Sophia paused. Question is, what do you want to do with a bomb this big? Carlo smiled in the darkness. We're going to detonate it. Carlo had never met Assistant U.S. Attorney Rebecca Chen, but he knew her reputation. Fresh from successfully prosecuting 3 state senators, transferred to the District of New Jersey 6 weeks ago with a mandate to clean up judicial corruption. Young, ambitious, and according to Marco's research, pathologically incapable of being bought. Perfect. The package arrived at her office via courier at 9 a.m. on a Tuesday. No return address. Just a plain manila envelope marked urgent, judicial misconduct. Inside, a USB drive and a single typed note. Asterisk, the system protects its own. Someone should protect the victims instead. Asterisk. Sophia had sanitized the digital trail so thoroughly that God himself couldn't trace it back to Carlo's operation. Every document, every photo, every sealed complaint had been verified through 3 independent sources. It wasn't just evidence, it was a prosecutor's wet dream. Gift-wrapped and undeniable. Chen opened the file at 9:47 a.m. By 10:15, she'd convened an emergency meeting with her senior staff. By noon, the FBI had agents pulling court records from the 3rd District archives. Carlo watched it unfold from his club's office, monitoring news feeds and police scanners. Marco stood by the window, phone pressed to his ear, listening to their contact in the courthouse. They're sealing the building, Marco reported. Federal marshals just arrived with subpoenas. Chen's moving fast, already filed for an emergency review of all Staples cases from the past decade. Carlo's phone buzzed. A text from his real estate attorney. Asterisk, Marina development hearing postponed indefinitely. Judge Staples recused, federal investigation pending. Asterisk. There it was. 6 months of planning, $12 million in legal groundwork, his entire path to legitimacy frozen. The Marina deal that would have transformed him from criminal to mogul, suspended because a federal prosecutor was about to tear apart the judge who controlled it. Marco read his expression. We just torched our biggest opportunity. No. Carlo set down his phone, watching news alerts populate about a federal probe into judicial corruption. We just proved something more valuable than real estate. What's that? That some things matter more than expansion. Carlo's jaw tightened. Even in our world. Especially in our world. The news broke at 6 p.m., prime time for maximum damage. Every major outlet led with the same headline. Family court judge suspended amid federal corruption probe. Carlo watched it unfold on the bank of monitors in his office. Alexis standing beside him. Her hand trembled slightly as Judge James Staples appeared on screen, flanked by expensive attorneys, reading a prepared statement about baseless allegations and politically motivated attacks. But his eyes told a different story. They carried the barely concealed panic of a man watching his armor crack in real time. The Attorney General's office has appointed a special investigator, the news anchor continued. Sources say the probe centers on a pattern of sealed misconduct complaints and alleged abuse of judicial authority spanning more than a decade. Marco entered with a tablet. The floodgates just opened. 3 women have already contacted Chen's office. 2 more called the press directly. He pulled up a news site. This one's going live in 20 minutes. The article featured a former clerk, speaking on camera with her face shown, using her real name. She detailed Staples' harassment, his threats, the way the system had protected him when she tried to report it. Her voice was steady, her anger righteous and devastating. They're calling it the Staples effect, Marco said. One woman speaks. Suddenly others feel safe enough to come forward. Alexis's breath caught. I need to add my voice. Carlo turned to her. You don't owe anyone your story. Not even for this. No. Something fierce had replaced the fear in her eyes. But I owe it to myself. She took the tablet from Marco, pulled up the reporter's contact information. He made me silent for 2 years. Made me believe the system would always protect him and punish me. I want him to know that's over. By midnight, 7 women had given statements. By morning, it was 12. The news cycle fed on itself, each testimony adding weight to the federal case. Staples' attorney released a statement calling it a witch hunt, but the system that had protected him for 15 years was finally, irrevocably turning against him, and Carlo made sure Alexis was there to watch it burn. The disbarment proceedings were announced on a Thursday. By Friday afternoon, Staples had stopped answering his attorney's calls. Carlo recognized the pattern he'd seen it in cornered men before, that particular silence that preceded violence. He's going to come for her. Carlo spread surveillance photos across the conference table. Marco and Sofia leaned in, studying images of Staples leaving his house at odd hours, disheveled and drinking, the veneer of judicial dignity completely stripped away. Men like him don't accept loss. They double down. Marco tapped a photo from that morning. He drove past her apartment building twice yesterday. Didn't stop, just slowed down. Classic reconnaissance. His legal team abandoned him, Sofia added, pulling up financial records on her laptop. Bank accounts frozen pending the federal investigation. Wife filed for divorce this morning. It hit the docket an hour ago. He's lost everything, which makes him exponentially more dangerous. Carlo's voice carried the cold calculation of someone who'd orchestrated enough violence to recognize its approaching shadow. A man with something to lose can be controlled. A man with nothing left burns everything down. He pulled out his phone, texting rapid instructions. Sofia, I want real-time GPS on his vehicle. Hack his phone if you haven't already. I want to know every call, every text, every search. Marco. Position teams at Alexis's apartment and the safe house. Rotating shifts, armed, rules of engagement, our immediate intervention. What about Alexis? Marco asked. She stays at my estate until this is resolved. Security detail 24/7, no exceptions. Carlo studied the photo of Staples, noting the wild look in his eyes, the clenched fists. He's going to make his move within 72 hours. Men like him follow patterns. Public humiliation triggers private retaliation. Sofia's laptop chimed. Boss, you need to see this. He just Googled temporary restraining order, violate consequences, New Jersey. The room went silent. He's not just planning to confront her, Marco said quietly. He's calculating whether it's worth it. Carlo's expression hardened into something absolutely lethal. Let him come. We'll be waiting. Sofia's alert came through at 9:47 p.m. Asterisk. He's moving. Heading toward the safe house. Asterisk. Carlo was in the Escalade before Marco finished reading the message aloud. How long? 8 minutes if he takes the highway. 12 if he's being cautious. Marco was already coordinating on his headset. Team 2 is 4 minutes out. Tell them to hold position 1 block away. I want him caught in the act, not scared off. Carlo's knuckles were white on the door handle. And get Chen's office on standby. We need federal agents to make this arrest clean. They were still 6 minutes away when Sofia's voice crackled through the speaker. She's leaving the safe house. Walking to the corner store boss. She doesn't know he's coming. Carlo's blood turned to ice. Get her on the phone, now. She left it charging inside. The Escalade speedometer hit 90. They arrived to screeching tires, and Marcos shouted warning. The safe house's corner store was half a block down, its flickering neon sign casting shadows across the empty street. Staples' Mercedes sat abandoned at the curb, driver's door still open. Carlo was out and running before the SUV fully stopped. He found them in the alley beside the store. Staples had Alexis pinned against the brick wall, one hand around her throat, his face contorted with rage and desperation. You destroyed me. Everything I built. Everything I... Alexis's knee came up hard and fast, connecting with brutal precision. Staples doubled over with a choked gasp. She didn't hesitate, grabbed a discarded metal pipe from the dumpster and swung it against his shoulder with every ounce of 2 years' worth of fear converted into fury. Staples went down hard. Carlo reached her as she raised the pipe again, catching her wrist gently. Easy. I've got him. She was shaking, adrenaline and tears mixing, but her voice was steady. I'm not a victim anymore. No, Carlo agreed, as Marco and 2 others secured the groaning Staples. Sirens wailed in the distance, Chen's federal agents, right on schedule. You never were. The estate sat on 12 acres overlooking the Atlantic, far enough from the city's chaos that the only sound was waves against private beach. Carlo had brought Alexis here 3 days ago, after the federal agents took Staples away in handcuffs, and the news cameras captured his complete unraveling for the world to witness. She stood on the terrace now, wrapped in one of Carlo's jackets against the October chill, watching the security team change shifts with military precision. Her bruises were fading from purple to yellow, the swelling in her ankle finally subsiding. Carlo joined her with 2 glasses of wine, though neither of them drank much. Marco called. The grand jury indicted Staples on 14 counts: assault, stalking, obstruction of justice, abuse of authority. Chen's office is calling it the biggest judicial corruption case in state history. And the marina development? Dead. The city council voted to suspend all pending projects under federal review. He said it without bitterness, a simple statement of fact. Cost me everything I'd been building toward. Alexis turned to face him, something fierce and certain in her expression. Why? You barely knew me. You could have. My sister lives in Portland now, teaches kindergarten, has panic attacks when men raise their voices. Carlo's jaw tightened. I couldn't save her when it mattered. I was too young, too powerless. But I'm not anymore. He met her eyes. Some ledgers need balancing, even when the cost is everything. She was quiet for a long moment, watching the waves. When she spoke, her voice was steady, deliberate. I don't just want your protection, Carlo. He went still. Alexis, I want your purpose. She stepped closer, closing the distance he'd carefully maintained. You build empires. You break untouchable men. You turn money and power into justice when the system fails. Her hand found his. Teach me. Not how to hide anymore, how to fight. Carlo studied her face, the woman who'd swung a pipe at her abuser, who'd testified on camera, who'd refused to be erased. It's a dangerous world I live in. I know. She smiled, sharp and unafraid. That's why I'll fit right in. Carlo's thumb traced the fading bruise on her wrist, a ghost of another man's claim that no longer held power. You understand what you're asking? There's no going back from this world, no clean exit. I've been trapped in someone else's world for 2 years. Alexis's voice was steady, certain. At least in yours. I'll be the one choosing the danger. The ocean wind carried salt and the promise of storms. Behind them, the estate lights glowed warm against the approaching darkness, a fortress built on violence and strategy, now sheltering something neither of them had planned for. Your first lesson starts tomorrow, Carlo said finally. Sophia will teach you how systems work, where they're vulnerable. Marco will show you how to read people, anticipate threats. He paused, something almost vulnerable crossing his features. And I'll teach you the most important thing, how to turn pain into power that protects instead of destroys. Alexis leaned into him, her head against his chest where his heartbeat was steady and sure. What about the marina development? Everything you lost? I didn't lose everything. His arms came around her, protective and possessive in equal measure. I found something worth more than empire, worth more than legitimacy. He pressed a kiss to her temple. I found my purpose again. Below them, the Atlantic crashed against private shores, relentless and unchanging. But here, in the space between danger and safety, between criminal and protector, 2 people who'd survived their own kinds of violence were writing a new story, one where the monster became the guardian, and the victim became the warrior. Thank you so much for watching. If Carlo and Alexis's story moved you, please hit that like button and subscribe to our channel. We bring you powerful stories of justice, redemption, and unlikely heroes every week. What did you think? Should we continue their story? Would you want to see Alexis in action, protecting the next victim? Let us know in the comments below. We read every single one. Share this video with someone who loves thrilling stories with heart. And remember, sometimes the most dangerous protectors are the ones who've learned that true power isn't about building empires, it's about protecting the people who matter. Before you go, you absolutely need to see what's coming up next on your screen. We've got another incredible story that will leave you on the edge of your seat. It's intense, emotional, and packed with twists you won't see coming. Trust me, if you loved Carlo and Alexis's journey, you're going to be obsessed with this next one. Click now and prepare to be blown away. Until next time, stay safe, stay strong, and never underestimate the power of someone who refuses to be a victim.